In this video, I want to explain why I don't vote. Now, before you go calling me a fucking moron, just hear me out for a couple of minutes here. The way I want to explain this is through why I'm so turned off by it. So let me start with this. There's political zealots on both sides, right? In America, our political dichotomy, left and right, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, whatever you want to call it. And even the moderates are guilty of what I'm going to get into as well. Most of the people on each side seem to be guilty, if you ask me. But the zealots and a good portion of the moderates, they on each side, they see little validity in the opposing perspective. So there's no communication, there's no listening. This is what ensues. This is what results in all the gridlock, right? Virtually everyone will agree that this is a big problem. Now, again, where does such polarization come from? Well, from what I just said, lack of understanding, lack of communication, lack of listening, lack of willingness to understand the opposing perspectives. And the zealots, and again, some of the moderates on either side epitomize these traits. They mirror the people that they vote for. They display the same lack of communication in politics to the point where it can't even be discussed in locations or in groups that are supposed to be of the highest camaraderie, which includes family, family gatherings, nights out with friends, etc. I mean, the fact that we're not even willing to bring it up, the fact that it's treated the same way as profanity or a taboo topic in some theocratic governments, for instance, something that's considered like dirty or unsacred. That's basically the parallel that's kind of being drawn here because we're not supposed to talk about it in either case. And it's just when it's gotten to that point, I mean, you want to say I'm a problem, and that's true to a certain extent, but how are you not part of the problem as well? You know, how is your heavy political involvement? You're involved to your party to the point where you get pissed off if people disagree with you. How are you not part of the problem yourself? How are you not causing part of that gridlock? And they don't. These same zealots and again some moderates don't realize that if they had the same jobs in Congress, they would be doing the exact same things that they criticize the people in office for. In other words, they wouldn't be communicating with the other side. They wouldn't listen. They wouldn't try and understand, and they would cause this gridlock. In other words, they too are part of the problem. I mean, being involved is important and all, but if you can't even communicate with people from the other side and you're so hyper involved in your own party and to the point where you just don't want to see any validity whatsoever, then you might as well not talk at all because at that point you're just adding fuel to the fire. In other words, it's best if you remain silent, and it's pretty much analogous to you not being involved at all because you go out and insult people the other side. The backfire effect is just going to happen. They're not going to listen to what you have to say. They're just going to dig their heels into the ground more. They're going to be even more convinced that the other side is full of, I don't know what you want to call it, idiots, demons, heretics, traitors, non-patriots. There's so many fucking aspersions out there floating around that is absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, let me recap. It literally might have been better if you remained silent. In other words, you pretty much would be exactly like me, someone who's not barely involved at all. Everybody's guilty of this, from rural areas, can't say that word very well, to Ivy League colleges. I mean, I've read a lot of literature where it's often talked about how many universities view conservatives as if they were another species, and they sit and conjure up all this bullshit armchair philosophy trying to figure out why they think the way they do. They'll write stacks of papers. They'll go over the ceiling to political theory and ideas and stuff like that. And they just have the ivory tower shoved so far up their asses that they forget how easy it is to actually figure this out by sitting down, talking to these people, just by simply listening. You'd be able to throw all those theories away with not with the snap of a finger, but you'd be able to figure out a lot more easily why they behave the way they do. And I don't know, actually see that they have some validity in their points. And liberals aren't just guilty of this, aren't the only ones guilty of this. Conservatives, it's the same thing. Conservatives are notorious for ignoring data, such as the correlation between the amount of gun ownership and the amount of gun violence in the country, or the crime statistics of immigrants versus fellow citizens of your country. I mean, hell, even the NRA actually managed to bar the CDC from doing gun control research. The one thing that would have allowed us to look at this policy objectively and move forward with it. I mean, they seem to prefer their crystal balls. It's a little ridiculous. And hold on, let me think real quick. When I'm with people, I always play a trick. When somebody tells me I'm part of the problem for not voting, I always say, I'm going to vote for the candidate that's not theirs, the opposite candidate, the one that they don't want me to vote for. And I get the same reaction every time, regardless if it's a liberal or they look like I'm the dumbest motherfucker on the planet. It was never about not voting. You just want me to vote for your candidate, and that's it. Because you see absolutely no validity in the other side, you just came up with this cloud, so to speak, of saying that the problem was not voting to make yourself appear a little bit more righteous than you actually are. In other words, it's just nobody wants to come right out and say it that my candidate is the only correct choice. And I've seen this on both sides so many times, a little bit more frequent with liberals thinking they have all the answers, thinking that they always get tired of explaining to people, or they're tiring of educating or preaching, etc. It's like I said, they think they have all the answers, and they don't actually sit down and talk. Now, the fact that I see the word explain used so often, or I get tired of explaining, it tells me that you're stuck in that mindset, that you're already refusing to listen to what somebody else might have to say, that you already think you have all the answers. And again, that tells me everything I need to know about how I'm going to have a conversation with you in politics. And it's just like the political gamut, it's gone one-dimensional. It's worse than flatland. And what I mean by that is there's no room to wriggle around. People always try and categorize people as one or the other, liberal, conservative, or centrist, or whatever. And there's just, when you use one-dimensional, you're only around people of your same type, liberals over here, conservatives over here. There's no wiggle room except moving left or right, and you're just going to hear your echo chamber, and it's just going to exacerbate and get worse and worse and worse. So now let me explain why I don't vote. It's because I've yet to see a candidate who actually attempts to communicate with the other side that he doesn't run for, someone who can see the strengths in the opposing side. And again, both parties have valid points. And I want to see someone who synthesizes a new plan with the best points from both sides. I want to see someone who stops with the personal attacks and actually attempts to bridge the communication gap. And it's just, every single time I watch a presidential debate of either Democrats or Republicans, I mean, the candidates are attacking each other within their own parties. It's like they can't keep it civil. Their attacks are unfounded most of the time. And it's just that it doesn't matter if it's not like an overt insult like Trump does. It's just absolutely ridiculous. All they want to do is attack each other instead of articulating their own points and actually attempting to work together and synthesize something new. And no candidate's really good at being themselves. No candidate wants to admit when they don't know the answer to the question, say, I don't know, but I'm going to research that and I'm going to get back to you. So they sidestep around it with all this fucking bullshit, circuitous political rhetoric. I don't even know what else to say. It's just they avoid the question entirely, but they say it in such a way that it sounds like they answer the question. And if somebody questions them on that, they're like, well, just answer that. We don't have a lot of time. We got to move on. So am I part of the problem? In a way, yes. But if you're hyper involved in politics, that doesn't mean you aren't as well, because you're not listening to the other side. You're not looking at their valid points. You're just causing all that gridlock. And like I said, as soon as I see, the number one red flag to me is this. As soon as I see, oh, I'm so tired of having to explain this to people, that's when I don't even bother conversing with that person. Because to me, that is a red flag that that person thinks they have all the answers. They think there's nothing valid on the opposite side. They don't want to listen. They don't want to communicate. They don't want to understand. I mean, not all the time, but I have just had some of these political discussions where if you even slightly deviate from them, they just, before you know it, you have 15 angry reacts on every single comment you're making in the discussion, and you're ostracized from the community. I mean, it's just ridiculous, man. So if you see somebody saying those words, it's a red flag, along with the words educate and preach. Not always, but just from my experience. So that's why I don't vote. If you actually manage to come across this video, leave me a comment below, keep the discussion civil, and if you end up encountering somebody with an opposing perspective, actually try and understand them, communicate with them.